We're pleased to be speaking with Joseph J. DioGuardi, a CPA who is a former New York congressman. He's written a book and updated it, and it's called Unaccountable Congress, It Doesn't Add Up. Mr. DioGuardi, thanks for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure, Kevin.
Well, first of all,
you know what Thomas Jefferson said? Information is the currency of democracy.
Yep.
So you're playing an important role today getting this message out.
Thank you. Well, it is an important message. Your book is a remarkable one, which is so pertinent to what's going on and has been going on right now. One of the terms or the descriptions you use is the most expensive credit card in the world. What is that for our listeners?
Well, when I was in Congress, and believe it or not, I was shocked to find out that I was the first practicing certified public accountant ever elected to Congress, House or Senate. What does that tell you about what's going on? I could be flippant and I'll say, you know, everybody seems to want to spend, but no one wants to count, at least count the right way. This is something that I have a passion for, Kevin. Not many people have a passion for numbers, but since I was raised in the firm that had that passion, was lucky enough to go to Congress and then apply that knowledge, and then when I left, wrote a book about it, I want to continue this message, and thanks for this opportunity to be on your show to give it.
Absolutely. Now, while you were there, as you mentioned, your eyes were really opened about what was going on and the cooking of books, really, that Congress engages in. Talk about a few of the gimmicks that you mention in your book, Unaccountable Congress.
Well, let me get back to complete the question you asked me, because that image of the credit card is important. When I was in Congress, I realized every time I put my little voting card in, which was the same size as your Visa card or MasterCard, a plastic card with my picture on it and some perforations so that the computer would register my vote, that really what I was doing was raising the national debt because of the deficit spending. And I said, you know what? This is really a credit card. Because every time I vote, and over 50% of the votes in the House were on numbers, I'm raising the national debt through these deficits. And that's why I started the book off with the first chapter. The most expensive credit card in the world is a congressman or a congresswoman's voting card, and I put at the bottom of it, Kevin, credit line unlimited, expiration date never, why, no term limits, and bill to future generations. So that became the theme of the book. Now, the gimmicks that I saw were basically in the budget process. Now, the biggest gimmick of all, we have an accounting system in the budget process that is the worst you can possibly think of. It's called the cash basis. What is that? That's the system you use when you balance your little checkbook or your check register. When you write a check, it's an expense. When you get a check in the mail, it's income. That is not the system that the Securities and Exchange Commission imposes on publicly traded corporations to protect shareholders. And I say, why aren't we protecting taxpayers? The system that is supposed to be used is called, technically, the accrual basis, generally accepted accounting principles, an evolution of accounting that happened over 100 years, but basically since the Depression, that says, you know what, you got to account for things this way. When you get a bill, even though you don't pay it, that's an expense. When you make a commitment, let's say a pension liability, and you know it's a legal commitment, and it can be measured through actuaries, even on a present value basis, that's an expense, a liability that should be recorded. On the income side, even though I don't get the check or the cash, if I have the right to receive something, it's called an accounts receivable, that should be recorded as income. Would you believe the budget process of the United States of America, where we spent last year over $3.5 trillion? The point is, we're spending last year $1.5 trillion more than we raised in taxes, so we had to borrow it. That whole system is on the cash basis, meaning public officials, elected officials, can game us by putting in commitments to be paid in the future, claim credit for it, but the money's not there. That is the biggest gimmick in the world, that we don't have an accounting system that allows us to do that. Now, what would be the first thing that accounting system would take care of if we had the right one, Kevin? Since 1968, starting with Lyndon Baines Johnson, in order to disguise the cost of the Vietnam War, he came up with a gimmick called the unified budget. Why? He saw in the Social Security Trust Fund a lot of money sitting there in cash. We didn't have Medicare building up at that time. Now it's Medicare and Social Security. So he decided, you know what? Why should I show such a high deficit, including the Vietnam War, when we're sitting on that cash? Why don't we just blend the two so that the net deficit is then shown? So basically, we've been doing that for 40 years. And to make matters worse, if you looked at the Social Security Trust Fund today and the Medicare Trust Fund, there is no money in it. There are IOUs, Treasury bills, that are accruing interest. Now the baby boomers are coming along and want their money. Now we got to raise that money. Besides everything else we got to raise to run government today. This is what the wrong accounting system does. It becomes intergenerational injustice because, in effect, it allows you to steal from one generation and give to the other. That is not what good accounting is all about.